Everybody, what's up? Frank Fradella here on the Art of Creation show, episode number Trace, maybe Quattro. I haven't decided yet. We might mix it up. I might be a madman. Speaking of madness and method to that madness, today we're joined by the absolutely astounding creator of magnitude, Cory Michelle. But first, allow me to introduce you to my stunning, staggering, startlingly amazing co-host, Rebecca
Where?
Boswell.
Who? Me?
You.
Awesome.
Hi.
Better.
So I'm maybe the luckiest guy on earth, where every week I get to hang out with just beautiful women and pretend like I'm doing something other than just basking in the amazing energy of this. So guys, thanks so much for joining us again this day. Cory Michelle, you're in Australia. Good day.
Good day, mate.
How's it going down there?
Oh, it's good. We're in summertime, and somebody forgot to tell me it's really hot.
Hot in Australia in the summer?
I know, it's ridiculous, right?
Have you never seen Mad Max?
No, it's funny because you have certain points of view or no point of view, and then you choose things, and then you're like, oh, this is what it's like. Oh.
This is that reality that I just wasn't aware of.
This is what I didn't want to know about this before I made this choice, because I might not have made it so soon. I waited until like March. We're still up against the face melting month of February.
So I want to ask you about how this move came about, because this was the kind of thing where you went over there to do something. I don't remember what that something was. And then you were like, oh yeah, I love it here. I'll probably be back. And then like an hour and a half year later, you were just like, yeah, moving to Australia. And everyone was like, she's moving to Australia? She means she's going to visit Australia again. And she's like, no, that's not how I roll. Shut up. You're stupid. And then like all of a sudden you were just like moving to Australia. Talk to me about how that showed up in your world.
Oh, you know what? It was a creation that's been in my world since I was a kid. So it's like everything you ask for will show up. You just don't necessarily know when or how, right? And it was always a fantasy of like, oh, maybe I'll get to Australia one day, like not moving, but just visiting. Mm-hmm. And then one day I realized, oh, I could just buy a plane ticket and go. Like after 20 years of wishing and hoping and having it on my bucket list like it was some faraway thing. And then I came here 3 years ago for an access class. And then I was like, I told my assistant at the time, I said, I want to move there. I'll live there someday. And I totally forgot about it. And then after I broke up with my fiance earlier like a year ago, actually right now, I was like, well, what do I really want my life to be like? And I was like, I want to spend like a while in Australia. So I scheduled a 5-week trip, and I did a few things down here, started writing my book down here. And then I literally was on the beach, and I was talking to another facilitator, and I said, you know what? I said, what's it going to take for me to, and all of a sudden there was this energy, and I was like, holy cow, it's happening already. And what I was going to say was, be here a lot, like be here more often. And it was like Australia, the land, the ocean, everything was like, we got your back. We're already working on it. You don't need to worry. I was like,
so this is cool.
Okay.
So this wasn't just, how can I be here a lot? All of a sudden you're like, how can I be here the most? How can it just be like, this is all of it now. Like all I am is in Australia.
Well, for the last 2 months, I've been here for 2 solid months. But then I went back to the US, right? And then I knew I had to come back because I have a mastermind group here. So I knew I had to come back around Thanksgiving time, which is like November 24th, right, for this conference. And then I literally was looking at like, oh, maybe I'll stay for like 3 or 4 weeks. And then I was like, oh, because nothing was light to come back. Like I couldn't find a flight back because I booked one way. And because I wanted to put that into existence so it would start creating for me. And then I started going, well, wait a second, there's nothing light to come back. Is it December 31st? Is it January 4th? Nothing was light. And then I'm like, well, wait a second. So I put it on the table. I was like, well, let's just see when I come back. Like, well, when do I have to come back? And I was like, well, I have a class scheduled in San Diego for January like 17th. Do I need to do that? Nope. Took that off the schedule. Now I could stay all the way until, well, what was my next thing? Oh, February 4th in San Diego. Do I need to be there for that? Nope. And I was like, well, the next thing is Thailand. I'm like, well, why would I go all the way to the US when I got to go back to Thailand? So it's like, oh, at least I'm staying 3 months. And then here's the magic part. So that just literally
No, this is the magic part coming up. We haven't yet heard the magic part, Rebecca. I want you to take note.
Just in case you accidentally thought that was magic already.
Right. Yeah. For our viewers who believe that, yeah, just picking up, going to Australia, not magic at all. Shut that down. Wait for the Harry Potter stuff. It's coming up. Get your wands ready. Okay, here we go.
Well, it's true. It was all just literally like being in that question of like, okay, what will actually contribute to my life being like off the charts, crazy possible, right? So then I get this call. Well, so then I'm like, okay, well, I'll spend 3 months there on my visa. I could spend 3 months. And then from there, I started thinking, well, if I'm going to spend 3 months, then what am I going to do with my house, my dog, my car, like all those things, right? So I just was asking questions about those. All of a freaking sudden, somebody introduces me to somebody who knows how to get a permanent visa here. And luckily, like a life coach is somebody who can get a permanent visa here. Bing, bang, boom, I'm in process to get a permanent visa in Australia. So I'm like, shit, I'm moving.
What?
I can actually say, okay, great. So it was literally like the magic of the universe going, yeah, I really got your back. I got your back on this one. Okay. You don't have to stress. You don't have to push. You don't have to force. Just be in question and choose. Right?
And
like allow it to show up.
Yeah, what total choice that is. It's like, you just have a permanent visa. You can just be there as long as you want, and you can come back and you can go. And now it's like there are no parameters. It's like these countries are completely open to you and at your will. So how cool is that?
Exactly. So, and one of the questions that I asked was, I think it was in February, I was like, you know what would it take for me to not be limited to the United States?
Yeah.
Like what would it take for me to freely be somewhere else if I chose to live somewhere else full time, or to be able to freely come in and out of the country? There was some awareness there that I had that I wanted to have that accessibility.
Yeah, and it's so cool because you actually didn't have to decide, right? And like you can actually just choose and keep choosing without there even being any kind of like finality or stamp or period. Like it's really cool. So yeah, in terms of creating this fluidity, wow, what else is possible? And I just love this. Like so far we've been talking with our guests, we've really just seen how each person that we've spoken to, how they just have this magical sense of who they are that is just infused in everything that they do and that they be. And I just love watching how that shows up with you too. And you've created, it's been really fun for me to watch over the last few years how this whole crazy possible experiment has evolved, how this crazy possible just way of being has begun to have sort of this movement of its own, and all the energy that is, and all the fun unicorn magic that has come out of that, and like your smile is just so bright and happy and shiny, and like that joy, it just is bubbling, and it's so fun. And that, like, when you talk about magic, like a lot of people talk about magic in so many different ways and with so many different trappings, and when you talk about magic, it's just this like super light, fun possibility that, is just such an invitation. And I would love to hear more about this, this Cory Michelle-ness of crazy possible. Like,
Hang on, I got to do a Cory Michelle impersonation here really quick. One of my favorite pictures of anybody ever in the history of ever. There's a picture of Cory Michelle where she's doing this move. Right, hang on. Right, I love this picture. I'm going to put it in the show notes because it's amazing. It's like the attitude and the way she shows up. She's like, I'm having that, bitch. Right, like I fucking love that shit. Right, and it's just like part of like what when we talk about the energy of people and like how you've chosen to show up and how we're aware of you, and I think most people are aware of you, is that like you moved to Australia And I don't think anybody was like, oh my God, she's moving to Australia. I think it was like, of course she's moving to Australia. She said she was going to move to Australia, therefore it just happened. Right? Like if you said I'm doing a bars trade on Mars, I'd be like, she's going to do that. I have absolute faith. Cory Michelle could make that happen if she chose to. Right.
And yet there's like this nonchalance about it, which is so cool. And I get that that is sort of the embodiment of, you know, no point of view, where it's like, yeah, this is fun for me. I'm doing it. I'm both making the demand and there's like no solidity to it at all, which, you know, how does that even work in this reality? You know, like I get that it's there and I see it. And yet for some people who are watching this show, they're probably like, what are you talking about? So I just was wondering, like, when you started to create all of this, like by infusing all the magic and infusing all this fun and this play, but also around some themes that are considered really serious in this reality, you know, around money, around business, around relationship, around, you know, the new piece that you're doing around narcissism and you know, also, you know, abuse and all of those things. And it's like, you know, how do you make it so sparkly and yet relevant, right? Like it's relevant and it's powerful and there is magic. And like, did you just all of a sudden have ease with that? Or was like, what is it that, you know, kind of you had to choose and that kind of people watching this could be aware of for themselves too, in being able to create something that is way different than anything that a lot of other people are creating?
Cory, we've just given you a rather intimidating build up here, and we've asked like 14 questions in the course of that. I know. So I just want you to pick
my husband. He's always like, ah!
Pick the thing that feels lightest to you and go with that, honey. Just run. Go.
Got it. Can you guys hear me okay right now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I just had to switch internets on you. Okay, so yeah. Let's see here. What do I want to say about all that? So thank you so much, first of all. Where do I start? When I started using the Access Consciousness tools, I had done a lot of other things that didn't really give me me. And I think that's always what I was looking for when I was doing everything else, right? But nobody ever, I mean, not nobody, but it wasn't my thing of like, give me more of me. I wanted money because money sucked, right? And so through the last almost 7 years of like taking as many freaking access classes as possible, there's been this awakening of who I am and acknowledgement of sort of these inklings or sparkles of what I've always been good at, but I've been good at it like this, right? And going, wait a second, so I'm actually really good at that. Like, okay, cool, what is that, right? Like, what is that capacity there? Like, what is that ability there? What is that? And starting to actually acknowledge me, and that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, was actually acknowledge the contribution that I be, the celebration of me, the like all of that stuff, because I can go and then it's like all about everybody else, right? It's all about everybody else is amazing and let's empower people, and I was like leaving myself out of it. And when I started acknowledging myself, there was this, and actually Gary Douglas gave me this process of what energy, space, and consciousness can I be to be the celebrity I truly be.
Yeah. And
it wasn't about being famous, because I don't give a shit about being famous. Sorry if there's no cussing on here, but it's you guys, so it probably is. Okay. But I didn't care about being famous. I didn't care about being a celebrity. But what I was leaving out was being celebrated. And that's what being a celebrity is.
Beautiful.
And when I started including that, I was in the car and it popped on my phone, that particular, it was like 3 years ago, and in one of the advanced body classes, and I heard it again, and I was like, oh my gosh, that acknowledgement of like the willingness to be celebrated and receive that has expanded the contribution that I can be in the world, the magic that I get to be in my life, and what actually, like literally the gift that I get to be. in actually receiving that, and not lumping it together with being famous, because I don't care about that, right? Like,
Yeah.
so like, and when people say, oh, I have one person in my life right now that's like focused on fame, and I'm like, the energy of that is just so different than what's a priority in my life. You know what I mean?
So it's hard for me to imagine you ever being, because I've only ever known you when you're this big, right? It's hard to ever imagine Cory
She's this
Michelle.
big. She's like,
Right? No, it's like, seriously, she's just like, right? Standing here with a spear with a unicorn horn as a tip, like just ready to fuck up some shit, right? Like, Cory Michelle's a badass, right? And so, like, I've always known you in this kind of like this thing,
Yeah.
right? And like, I can't even imagine I can't imagine you less than. And so, like, if you had one tip, like one tool that you would give people right now who are watching the show, who are like in this space where like, I know I'm capable of more, I literally don't know how to get there. Like, it just seems like living that large seems out of my reach.
Yeah. Oh God, there's so much in there, because if you would have asked me 7 years ago, if somebody would have told me this is what you're going to be doing, Cory, I would have said, bullshit. I don't have anything to talk about. There's no way I could do all that. I definitely am not confident enough. I'm not kidding either, right? Like, I did not have any point of view about what it looked like. But what I did know in my knowing was that I'm here to do something, to change something. And before, in my last business, I had an idea of what I thought that was, and I concluded about it, and it was killing me, how I thought it was my life purpose. And when I just started having fun and playing with it, and really not having a point of view about how it shows up, because in our world of facilitation and being a coach and all that kind of stuff, it's really easy to come to a lot of conclusions about what it looks like.
yeah.
And I literally, one of the questions that changed everything for me was I realized what was generative for me, what gave me energy. And one of the things that I acknowledged was that when I facilitate, I am like, whew, like I got energy. It's like I got a shot of like caffeine right to the vein, right? I'm like, yeah. And I was like, oh, wait a second, that's generative for me. That gives me energy. Yeah. And I asked this question, I said, what's it going to take to facilitate more?
Yeah.
And the next day is when the bars, like somebody invited me to do a bars class, and I wasn't a bars facilitator yet. And so I said, yes. I said, I just asked for that. I say yes to that. I figured out how to be a bars facilitator. I facilitated in a totally different state 2 months later. And then I had a bars class every month. And then I started facilitating more and more and more. But it was, I think a lot of people like take a class and they go, or anything really, and they go, I want to do that, like as the conclusion of what will make their life important or be the thing, whatever that is. And I say, forget that completely and look to see and acknowledge what is actually generative for you, what gives you energy. The more you do it, the more you feel alive, and ask to do more of that. And whatever is possible will start to reveal itself as you choose more of what's generative for you. Because I see a lot of people go to classes, or Access specifically, because that's kind of the world I live in, right? And they go, I want to be a CF. And they just did like an intro class. Well, great awareness, but like, let's look at what's generative for you, because being a certified facilitator, facilitating Access classes is not the thing for everybody. It's not everybody's brilliance or genius.
Yeah. And
if you have that conclusion, you might be missing all the other awarenesses of showing you what you'll actually go with, whatever that is, in your way.
Sure. Yeah. So let's introduce the choice creates awareness portion of the conversation here, right? So one of the things that happened for me was that I went to facilitators training in Costa Rica not long ago. And when I went because I demanded it. Like, I'd only been in Access for a year, and I came into it in a crazy way. I showed up one day, Cory ran my bars. The next thing I know, I'm on the crazy train, right? Like I've run away and I've joined the circus.
Yes.
Right? Like it was nuts, right? Pretty much, right? And it's so funny because I have this clip of me in San Diego, where I met Cory Michelle. It was like the day after she ran my bars, and I didn't choose Access. I was a video guy who got hired to come and shoot interviews with some of the people.
Yeah, you didn't choose Access at all.
I didn't choose Access at all. I chose the money for a 4-day, 5-day shoot in San Diego. Great. And then I showed up, and I was kind of blessed in that I didn't have a point of view about it before I got there. I didn't have any judgments or conclusions. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and I didn't know who Gary and Dane were. Gary and Dane being the co-creators of Access Consciousness. And so like when I met Dane, he was just another client that I was going to mic up, put in a chair, and interview. Like I literally had no point of view about the guy. And when I met Cory Michelle, and like, Blossom introduced me to Cory Michelle, and she's like, Cory's going to run your bars. And I'm like, okay, hi. Like, thank you. I don't know what that means, but okay. And I'm just going to lay on a table, and you're just going to go like, you're going to give me a Vulcan mind meld. I don't know why, but all right. It's a thing. It happens. 2 days later, somebody like Blossom asked, do you mind if we interview you and ask what your experience was here? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay, fine. And at that point, I just spent like 3 days. Like I felt like somebody had like plugged me into like a joy machine, and like I was just so happy for 3 days, and I was just running around hugging everybody. I was hugely unprofessional for like 3 solid days. I was just hugging and kissing everybody. I was off the hook. And when she asked me like, what do you think about this? And like I have this clip of me going, are you kidding? I want to do this. Like I want to be that guy up on the stage, and I want to like Brother Love's Traveling Salvation show around the world, and I'm going to hire Neil Diamond to come and play the show. And like I've got this clip of me like coming out of my skin, like I'm like vibrating on how badly I wanted this. And like a year later, like I chose it. And I was thinking this whole time that I had to be a CF in order to facilitate classes. And it was right after I came back from Costa Rica. I hadn't finished my prereqs. I'd gone to the thing, but I hadn't done my prereqs yet. And I came back, and I suddenly had this awareness that like there are things that I can facilitate and talk about, video production, for example, that I don't need anybody else's permission to talk about first. I didn't need a CF license. I didn't need this or that, right? So like how that choice created an awareness for me, or what else was possible. I hear Cory talking about right now, where like, choose this thing and then leave the space for what shows up. And I'm sorry that was a long way around to get there, but like, Cory's part of my origin story, and I'm just so excited.
Well, it's one of those cool things where it's like, there are a lot of people who, come to Access as a modality. They like to use the bars, to actually do the hands-on work. There are some people that just like the facilitation. They like the idea of shifting energy. They like the idea of being able to, change mindset and get out of mindset altogether. And some people create businesses with that. And some people also are just actually using it that they have created. So like, Gary and Dane would say, hey, if you're a realtor and you want to go be a realtor and ask questions and use the tools to be an amazing realtor, then go do that. If it's you being a pilot or a school teacher or whatever, it's you create your life, you be you. And what if you could have more ease with that, with these tools that we have? And then we have people like you, Cory, who are like, yes, and how fun is this if I create this whole playground for people and we can actually do it together and have fun with it and make all these kind of heavy, lots of times heavy topics, something that people are willing to look at and willing to play with, instead of closing them away in the closet or shoving them under the bed or, pretending that they're not there. So was this like a really easy shift for you to make into using energetic tools and using magic as like your core business value? Like
it's funny because I was working with entrepreneurs in my last business a lot. I had this whole it was like a conscious Yelp sort of thing that I was doing, and I thought it was a brilliant idea and I could see the possibilities, but I was so freaking in limitation and everything that possibility couldn't even be expressed because I wasn't even being me. And when I remember I actually did a talk about because I would talk about networking and connection and stuff like that and community. And remember being on stage at this church in Denver. It was a spiritual church. And I remember talking about coming out of the spiritual closet. And back then, this was like 10 years ago, back then people they weren't like sharing who they really were in their businesses, right? And when I started doing that, I noticed that things started to change in my world. Like I didn't feel like I was living a double life anymore. And like, this is business, and this is how you have to be in business, and this is me, and this is how I have to be in my private life, right? And you can't blend the two. You can't actually be all of you. And so that's sort of been a evolving sort of core value for me for a long time. And the more I stop hiding, like stop having hiding be a priority and start actually just being all of me be the priority, then all of these sorts of things come out of like being in a narcissist, being like engaged to a narcissist, to having my own insecurities, to like all the stuff that I've actually chosen to change and acknowledge that didn't really work for me in a way without this, like it is a story in a sense, but it's more like an example versus like, you know, like when people get up on stage and they go, oh my God, and they're crying, and they do that talk 150 times and they do the same cry at the same time, right? The storytelling, you won't see that with me. When I tell my stories or my examples of what I've chosen and all that kind of stuff, there's no energy on it. I'm not stuck in the past drama and trauma. I'm probably not going to cry about it unless I'm actually moved in that moment and there's something going on there, right? So people, what they've told me is that they appreciate that because there's just no attachment to the drama around it. It's just like, yeah, I was $150,000 in debt. Yeah, my life sucked. Yeah, I was totally depressed. I didn't even know it. Yeah, like all this stuff. Okay, great. Who cares? Oh, great. I was with this narcissist who I really like had thoughts in my head about I don't want to be on the planet a year ago. And I was like, wait a second, is that even mine? No, my God, it's the guy sleeping next to me. Oh, fuck, I gotta change something, right? Like
we're so glad.
Oh my God, thank God I changed that and got everything I got from that, because now there's this huge opening, especially with the whole being abused and narcissist conversation and everything that's going on in the United States and bullying. Something I never would have thought that I would be involved in. I'm literally like, no more secrets. That like this abuse doesn't need to be hidden. And check this out. This is something I realized the other day. I was like, why are people so adamant about protecting the perpetrators? I was like, what is that? And I've been asking that question for a couple of years. And then I was like, oh my God. Like I saw like sort of the matrix of all of it. And I was like, it's valuable to hold the secrets of these perpetrators for lots of different reasons we don't need to go into here. But the minute I saw that, and I was like, I will not hold the secrets of perpetrators as valuable to me any longer. What's valuable to me, if you want to call me a narc, if you want to call me whatever you want to call me, I'm pulling the veil back, because that is what's holding so much of why people can't be them in their lives, why people can't actually choose more, be more, create beyond, is because they're holding the secrets for all these people that are abusing them, and then they're abusing themselves. And I was just like,
yeah,
stop it.
How much control is in that too, like on both sides, right? Like even as the victim, right? If you're in control of the story and you hold and you're and the perpetrator story is not out there, then that makes your story true and real, to where you can continue to perpetuate that story of abuse or victim. And it's like, you know, what if there just was no story of victim anymore? And it's like, I was just having that conversation in a session today with a woman, and you know, that question of like, you know, what do we need to believe? Like, what do I need to believe in this moment for this reality to be real? Like, if I feel hurt, or I feel like I've been wronged, or I feel like I can't, or, you know, whatever all that stuff is, if I go and get hooked by that, what do I actually have to believe is true and real for that to work? And is that actually what I would like to be and how I'd like to show up in the world? And if not, okay, then what else can I choose here? So, I mean, it does open up such a huge conversation. And it's like when we can tear the lid off of this stuff, right? All those things that people have around fear and around shame and around blame and around guilt and around all these things that continue to lock all of these different pieces into place. I mean, what could we actually have on this planet? Like, let's just air all this shit out. And like, what would we actually have then, right? If all the putrescence could just like get away and we could have all the sparkly glitter unicorny stuff.
And that's exactly it, because when you're holding on to that stuff, and that's what I found when I was facilitating so many people, and I was mostly facilitating entrepreneurs in their business. And I was literally like putting my head against the wall of like, why aren't they going? Why isn't this working for them? Why aren't they working for them? And it was like all this stuff that was hidden. So somebody would hire me for a 6-month, facilitation package, and we wouldn't talk about business at all. We would talk about how their alcoholic mother was a narcissist and abusing them and all this other stuff that literally, like, it's like when people hire me, they don't really get what they think they're going to get. They're getting what's going to change everything.
Right. But I find so many times where you've got people who are like, listen, like, so it's the areas that you think you've got right that you don't want to change, right? So like, it's like playing Twister. I've got my right hand on red on the red circle, and I want to get my left foot over on green on the other side, but I don't want to move my right hand. And this is where I find people get jammed up. It's like, well, are you willing to look at everything? Are you willing to look at, like, what if you just all of you moved? Like, what's going to be required to get you where you want to go, instead of you kind of saying, no, the right hand is right. I'm sure that the right hand is right, exactly where it is. I don't want to move the right hand. I just want you to work with me for 6 months, stretching my left leg. Take it out of the socket if necessary, but don't move the right hand.
Yeah, and you can't move the left hand because, and that's where the whole story is. So it's like, you have like the whole story of what you can't do because, and you have the whole story of what you can't change because it's already right. And this you can't do because you're wrong. But let's make magic. It's like,
so talking about magic, I want to get in, I want to dive into this because for me, I'm deeply curious about how you've created a global business out of this, instead of like, people who do a bars class once a month, you get 4 or 6 people show up. If you're starting to get good at that, sometimes people are like, I'm doing it for a friend. I got one person coming to my bars class, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm glad you're creating. But we have Cory on the show because she's like, I'm not sure I want to do a class that's only got 40 people in it, but I've got the entire world to play with. And like, this is where this is what I'm talking about. This is how Cory Michelle. Right, Cory Michelle, tell me how you're dominating the world, and share with us your secrets. I will steal some of them.
Dominating the world with magic and sparkles. I think for some crazy reason, I've always had this awareness of like the globalness of possibilities, I think. Mm-hmm. And I was, when I first started my business, I had a facilitator around that always was thinking really big, right? And so I already kind of had that, and then I had that sort of example for me, and so I just thought that's the way it was. Like, that's just the way it was for me. And so I've done both. I've done a lot of I went a year and 18 months doing a 5-day, which is Access Consciousness Bars and Foundation class, a 5-day, at least once a month to sometimes twice a month.
Wow. Yeah, and with large classes, I remember, I with large classes too, and with great,
Well, not all of them were big though. Like, I had foundations with 2 people in them. I did bars classes with 3 people, and there was a lot of them like that. And there were also a number of them. I've done like 36 of them, I think. So there's some that were tiny, probably more that were tiny that were big, but then there was a lot of mid-size, like 6 to 12 people ones, and then I've had 20, 25 people too. So I've had the range, and for me, I'll just talk about the in-person, then we'll talk about the online sort of stuff. But the in-person stuff for me is valuable in the sense that those classes change a lot for me. Like, I'm actually very selfish. Every time I facilitate a 5-day, my whole life expands. And so,
by the way, while we're talking about numbers, if I may, you were mentioning 6 to maybe 12 people. Right now, your group, the Crazy Possible Experiment, has 10,973 members. Just putting it on the table while we continue to talk. Discuss
just let that process.
Just let that process while she blows your mind.
Online stuff, and that'll just kind of be waiting there for us.
Just
we'll go local to global. We'll go micro to macro, right? So, but it doesn't happen. And this is kind of my point: is it doesn't happen overnight. Like, people go, and I had this point of view because I had actually, like, I had a full Facebook group, or not group, but friends list at like 4,000 people that I knew in Denver when I first started. I thought that I was going to have 20 to 50 people in my classes starting off.
Right.
And I think I had to cancel my first class and probably my second class that I scheduled. And then I think maybe I got like 3 or 4 people in my class, the first one I actually did. Yeah. So you start where you start. And we have these grandiose visions sometimes that aren't really where we start. And then that's an easy place for us to judge ourselves, to go, oh, I didn't do enough, or there's so much more that's possible, but why am I not there? Do what's in front of you. And I love like Gary Vee. Yeah. If you've ever seen Gary Vee, right? He's super intense. Yeah. Yeah. And he's very much like, go, and that. And there's a lot of truth, I think, in what he talks about, because he'll say, if there's a podcast that has 100 followers, I'll do it. If there's a, this, and it's got 5 people listening, I'll do it. Why? Because if he talks to, and one person hears it, and he's able to, or they're able to receive something of value for themselves, it was worth it for him.
Yeah.
And Gary Douglas talks about that too. And I have that same thing is will it contribute like to the world? Will it contribute to consciousness? Not just will I make money?
Yeah.
And when I started functioning from that space, then it was like, so much more could actually show up, and I could choose things without having any attachment to them. So I could do a 5-day with 2 people and go, well, I wonder what this is going to create. Not, it's not worth my 5 days for the money.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can tell right there the difference in the energy, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I actually need to take a drink after that. That taste that left in my mouth. Yeah. This is not a paid sponsor, by the way, yet.
Right. So in that, like, I literally just kept going and asking for more and going for more. And at the same time, I already knew about how to do the online stuff. So I kind of built both at the same time. But that initial start, there was a lot of work I did. There was a lot of traveling I did. I had to expand my muscles in all areas of business and everywhere. And I see that a lot of times people just don't want to choose that. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to actually push themselves. They want it to come to them with ease, joy, and glory. Well, sometimes you got to sprint, and you got to do the workouts, and you got to practice, and you got to expand where you're not good.
Right.
Like when you don't have
this group, so you've got this group, as we mentioned, 10,973 members, 152 new members this week, by the way.
And it's only Tuesday.
It's Tuesday. Take your time.
No
hurry.
Friday.
Yeah. So I bring this up because it would be easy for anybody who wants to replicate that success to say, well, she did it in a year. And I know it wasn't just a year, right? Because there's a part of this that took far less than a year, because the Crazy Possible Experiment had thousands of members almost right away. Like, everybody dove in. Everyone was like, yes, I'm having that. Yes, I'll choose that. Yes, yes, yes. This is a whole group of yes. And I love that. And it looks like it built very quickly. Like, you started this thing and all of a sudden there's thousands of members and people are like, oh man, how did she do that? It's like, well, go back before the group was created, and what did you do to create the energy so that people would say yes to it?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's great. So there's a lot of doing, like we were just talking about, and then there's a lot of being. Yeah. Right? Because if I was just a push energy person, then people would not necessarily be like flocking to it. And there's a couple of things that I did. One of them is I asked for people to show up in my world that I could contribute to. And then I ask, what actions can I take or what can I create so they can find me, right? So I ask for them to show up, and then I create what I call beacons so that they can find me. And it was cool, so cool, because this whole crazy possible theme was, I mean, I feel like I gotta tell if you want the real story, like the way it happened, right? Versus oh yeah, I just created this group and it was so magical and look how awesome I am. All these people just wanted to be in it, right? It's not true. It's not true at all. I have a lot of people who don't like me. A lot of people who want to tell people like lots of shit about me too, right? So they're nuts. They're great. They're just crazy.
Names and addresses. Give them to me.
Well, for whatever reasons, all that's going on at the same time, right? And I just go, me, be more of me, right? So the Access has a 7-day in New Zealand, right? Mm-hmm. At least they used to. And I wanted to go the first year, and I didn't make the money. And I wanted to go the second year, and I didn't make the money. And I was pissed. And I was like, I'm going to the next one. The next one comes around 10 weeks before. I didn't have the money. And I was like, I am flipping going to be there no matter what. What do I need to create to be there? So I created a bunch of stuff. I needed $10,000 total to like make it all work. Made the $10,000 in about 10 days, and which was a mind blower for me. And I go to New Zealand. The New Zealand 7-day was called something crazy possible, like from crazy impossible to crazy possible. Okay, and so not only did I create something crazy possible for myself to actually be in the crazy possible class, there was something about crazy possible that just always was like sticking with me. So 2 months after that class, or that I got home, I bought the domains for crazy possible. I was like, I don't know what that is yet. I didn't have any point of view. I just knew it was talking to me. So a creation point is buying the domain. For me, that's yeah. And I've got like 80 of them right now. I'm just a hoarder of domains. I don't sell them. I sold one, but I made some money off of it. But anyway, so a year passes, and I'm like, so this was 3 years ago. So yeah, so a year passes, and I think, oh, I'm going to do this podcast. I'm going to do this. I'm going to interview people about living crazy possible or whatever that is. And it just wasn't going. I had people working on it. Had no energy on it whatsoever. And then I go to this freaking conference, and I'm sort of talking about some ideas. And this girl goes, have you heard of Pam Grout? I think her name's Grout or Gout. She does the E2 books. It's all about, it's like 7 experiments in like showing you the energy actually is real or something like that, right? And I was like, something clicked in my head when she said experiment. I said, oh my God, I'm an experimenter. I experiment. I never connected that word with who I was. I was like, holy shit, like I live as an experimenter because I don't relate to failure as a bad thing. I relate to failure as more awareness. I relate to what else is possible now because I've trained myself to be in that question. And as an entrepreneur and experimenter in my world are the same. If you're an entrepreneur, you are experimenting with what's going to work here. Oh, that didn't work. All right, what's going to work next? And all successful entrepreneurs that are continuing to be entrepreneurs, they function like that. So anyway, I got this, and then all of a sudden, like it was like this break through the heavens moment of, holy shit, what if we opened? Because the Facebook group was in my world for a while, but it just didn't come together as like go now. Yeah. All of a sudden it was go now, and it was like, okay, let's do the crazy possible experiment. We'll deliver an experiment every week in the vein of ask and you shall receive. And I was hoping for 500 people. Hoping 500 people would want to play.
That's what you get for you didn't get it.
And when we launched
it,
10,000 so far, right? And so that's how it showed up. Was like, it wasn't just me having some brilliant idea. It was the accumulation of choice after allowance of, okay, I don't know what this is yet. Show me what you are. And then it coming together and me getting like all the pieces of the puzzle and being aware of all of them. And then knowing like, okay, now you actually have something. All your pieces are here. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that people don't acknowledge that enough because we don't have enough experiences like that, right? Yeah. So we go, oh, I'm just waiting for it to show up, right? Yeah. Of when you get all the pieces, that's the time to go.
Yeah.
Not trying to force it before then because you don't have all the pieces yet. And you know it because it's not working.
Yeah. And also, I mean, talking to your creations, you know, actually asking your creations the questions too. I mean, last week we spoke with Stephanie Richardson, and she was talking about her paintings and the same thing of where she, you know, she ends up being in conversation and in question with these pieces, these creations of hers. And it's not just her deciding the course of how things are going to go and then muscling through. It's actually looking and asking and following. And sometimes there's just nothing. And so she'll just put it aside and work on another creation until that one pings again. Or she'll just keep going back and saying, hey, is there something now? Is there something I can choose now? Is there something I can add to this? Is there something that I can, you know, that I can see here that I hadn't seen before? And it sounds like you're really talking about a very similar process of just being very aware of what you're creating, talking to the creation itself also, to, you know, to see, you know, what it is willing to contribute and what it is requiring of you, whether it's you being something or you doing something, taking an action. Now, is that something that, you know, that you, because I recognize in your speech and in just the way that you be and are, that you have really begun to embody and to be a lot of the questions and the tools that that you work with. And it's just really awesome to see the ease and the flow and the invitation that is. And can you give any, maybe any tips to people who are maybe just either starting out with some of the questions that they heard today, whether or not they've ever even heard of Access Consciousness, or if they are, you know, starting out with the Access tools or have been using the Access tools? Like, what can you say to people who are, you know, maybe still kind of fumbling or not feeling completely like they're jiving with the tools, or feeling frustrated or like they want to quit or give up? Like, what would you contribute to them?
Ooh, God, there's so much. One is get in the Crazy Pestle experiment group and play with those experiments every week.
Cool.
That would be one way.
Yeah.
Because it's like a kind of like a support system too.
Nice alley-oop pass there, Rebecca. Nice alley-oop.
Alley-oop. But truly, like, that's why I created the group, was so that people would have a place to go where not only they're not doing it by themselves, they're actually doing it with a number of other people. And there's this, like, oh, that person did that, and that person asked it this way, and you expand because of all of you together. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that have other people around you. And this is what I tell people all the time. They say, oh, I don't have anybody to trade bars with. Nobody in my family or my group, my community, or whatever, my friend circle knows how to ask questions. Introduce them to it. Invite somebody in to do an intro. Like, give them the Magic You Are Be It book. Invite them to the Crazy Possible experiment. Like, get other people around you that are doing this with you, so you have some sort of I don't want to say accountability, but like collaboration on it. Yeah, playmate to play with you on it. So you got a question person, right? Like, you got somebody to, like, or multiple people to be in question about. And I think that's one of the things that really helped me, because I couldn't ask a question. I would go blank and go, what? I don't know what you're talking about. Like,
so if I may
ask questions and actually not answer them and be right.
Yeah.
So you can do that.
So Rebecca brought up a good point, and I think that we forget sometimes that some of our viewers might not be familiar with Access Consciousness. So what I'd like you to do, and this is partly selfish because I know you've got tools in your toolbox that are not question-based, that are not waving a magic wand, right? What tools in this reality, do you recommend people acquire, whether it's ClickFunnels? You mentioned a mastermind group. What things are you playing with in this reality that could be a contribution to people?
Well, if you've got a business, you're around people that are creating the kinds of businesses that, or the kind of energy that you would like to. My personal favorite is ClickFunnels with Russell Brunson. Has contributed so much in my world. And he has a book called .com Secrets.
What was it? I didn't actually hear I couldn't hear the words.
ClickFunnels is a software program, and then Russell Brunson is the kind of the main head guy of it. Okay. And then he has a book called .com Secrets. And that's awesome for just really looking at your whole business, to like all soup to nuts, all the things that you're going to have to look at for business. For the practical, pragmatic tools, I say freaking access tools are amazing. And some of the stuff that I've done is, if you are having trouble asking questions, put an alarm on your phone that every hour says ask a question. Access Consciousness has two apps now that you can use in the App Store. I think they're both on Android and Apple. But
it is now.
What I did was just, I looked at what am I sort of not remembering to do, right? And then I would put an alarm for it. So I would have it like contribute to the earth as one of them, right? Like who does this belong to is another one. What contribution can I be today is another one. So those are some of the main ones. And then I ask every single day, what energy, space, and consciousness can I be to be the contribution I truly be? And when I ask that question, that's what shows up, is how can Cory be a contribution today? Right? Simple. Like, it's not hard.
And so what would it be? Lightning round here. So I've got 5 questions. We're going to set them up, knock them down, take a minute or 2 to answer each of them. So I think we've already kind of touched on this. Let me see if you've got a different answer here. What tool can I add to my life today to stop making excuses and start creating?
Just choose.
Well,
awesome. 100% of our guests have given that answer, which is funny because I don't think any of you have seen the other shows. So, and some of you couldn't have because they were pre-recorded. So, all right. So, who inspires you to create more?
Ooh, Gary Douglas for sure. Dr. Dane for sure. So it just creates in such different ways. And Russell Brunson is also at the top of my list there. He fucking is magic in his creation as well with his businesses. And he's got all these different ones that he plays with, all in his brilliance. All he does is work in his brilliance. Awesome. And it's genius.
So have you ever heard of imposter syndrome?
I think.
Okay, so for those of you playing along with the home game who don't know what imposter syndrome is something that a lot of people, especially creative people and entrepreneurs, suffer with, which is because you're creating something new. At any moment, you're expecting someone to kind of kick in the door to your office and call you out for the fraud that you know you are and tell you why you don't have the right to be doing this and how you don't have the authority and you're not sanctioned by whatever, you haven't been given the red stamp. And people create from this space of kind of like, oh man, at any moment, they're going to take it all away from me when they realize what a fraud I am, right? It's like this Wizard of Oz kind of thing. They're going to pull back the curtain and find me there pushing the levers. So have you ever suffered from imposter syndrome? And if so, how do you or did you combat it?
I think that what I did was I thought I had to fake it until I could make it or until I could be it. Mm-hmm. So that was my version, I think, of that, of like that, just not acknowledging that anything that I want to do or create is actually what I can do or create. Right? I actually am not just faking it till I make it. I just be it to do it. Oh.
Sure. Yeah. So I love that. Right. So it's not like fake it till you make it. It's because I'm doing this because fuck you. That's why.
Well, yeah. Well, why not?
Right. Yeah. Do you have a favorite book or blog or TED Talk that you recommend to other people?
I don't read.
You mentioned the .com something.
The .com secrets with Russell Brunson. Yeah. But you know what I normally read is Damn You Autocorrect.
Okay. All right. Last question
for you. Hold on. Let me tell you why. Because I laugh so much when I read those autocorrects. Uh-huh. And when I need like a good laugh and to like actually get out of whatever energy that I'm in and laugh until I can breathe, that is a huge contribution in my life.
Fantastic.
I love that. I'm going to look to the auto cucumber from now on.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just shared something with Rebecca earlier this week that there's an entire blog out there, a Tumblr, dedicated to women alone laughing with a salad. Like there are pictures, like every time, like if there's a Wendy's commercial of somebody like eating a salad, it's always like, right, it's this ridiculous, right? And like every time I see, like this is one of the things that like I asked a question like about a year ago, like as I was introduced to more and more Access people, I'm like, every Access woman I know, and like 99% of Access is women, or at least in the sphere that I know, all of them have this headshot of, and I'm like, is that right? Right. And I'm like, what is that? Right. So there's an entire blog of people laughing alone with a salad, which I think is hysterical. Last question, Cory Michelle, how will you outcreate yourself in the next 12 months?
I wonder. Well, we just started the Crazy Possible year. We're creating a blessing of unicorns.
Fantastic.
Ooh, what's that?
Well, a blessing is a herd of unicorns.
What?
That is so perfect.
Anyway, we just opened it up, and I'm inviting everybody who wants to actually create their Crazy Possible year to come on in, and it's a whole membership. And I wonder what that'll create, literally, like with people around the world.
Where can people find out more about that?
They can go to crazypossibleliving.com/CPY. And I just did a free, like the intro to all of it, which is Crazy Possible Ask, how to actually ask questions. It's like a 2.5-hour free class if people want that. If they go to crazypossibleliving.com/web-class-ask.
We can put these things in the show notes if you give me the URLs.
It'll be down there. We can't even hear anymore. But yeah, like how to actually ask, because so many people like they're asking like, what would it take to have the red Corvette that has the interior that doesn't do this, that this does, the da-da-da-da, and they're confining it down to like the question isn't even a question anymore.
Yeah.
Right. It's like some conclusion about blah 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 blah, and I like in that class I just take it all and go, here's the kind of main things you want to be looking at when you're asking your questions, and here's the things you want to really avoid when asking questions, and how, like, sort of broke it down with the pitfalls and like how, like, what questions actually create for you. So
how to get the universe to actually hear you.
Exactly.
Cool. Cory Michelle, where can people find you online?
You know what? My business page on Facebook, which is official Cory Michelle, and meetcorymichelle.com is my website.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Cory Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. We've had a blast.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure as always. I'm just so grateful to you and everything that you're creating on this planet. And it's just so much fun to be, to just know that you're here on this planet doing what you're doing, and that everybody can choose what you're choosing. And that, I wonder how we will all outcreate all of this and what conversations we can be having next year when we do this.
Cory Michelle, I'm coming to see you in Australia because I love you so hard.
Yes. See you in Australia. Thank you guys for creating all this and inviting me to play. And what contribution can we all be for creating crazy, possible, awesome, amazing, delicious lives? And a reality that's that way. What would that be like?
What would it take?
What would it take? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining our show this week. I've been your host, Frank Fradella, alongside Rebecca Boswell. Rebecca, take us out.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Didn't you get the steps for the big dance number? I thought we just
jazz hands. When all the sales, jazz hands. And I do want to just put out this invitation that if there are any questions that are coming up for you as you're watching these weekly broadcasts, and questions about what is it that we were talking about, questions that sort of come on after that as you're get to use some of the tools that we've been talking about, please reach out to Frank, reach out to myself, post where you see this link, post in YouTube, post on Facebook, and let us know what those questions are. We would love to interact with you with those and to play with those and explore them further with you. So thank you so much, Cory Michelle, for showing up today. Thank you to everybody out there who's watching, and I just wonder what we can create next.
Thanks so much, folks. The Art of Creation show airs weekly, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube and on our Facebook page at The Art of Creation, facebook.com/The Art of Creation Show. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Bye.